We have had the problem for a while in Sydney, and in fact, there were some really ugly things happen in the eastern suburbs. For example, there were really dreadful slogans painted up on walls that we saw, which were anti-Jewish. They were "Kill Israel," those kinds of slogans. You remember those, you saw them on the news, these kinds of things. Now, when that happened, the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns, obviously was under a lot of pressure to react. You can't let that happen. You can't have the cars burn and such horrible "Kill Israel" signs being painted up. So what should we do? Well, Chris Minns said we need to toughen our laws and we need to restrict what people can say and do when it comes to expressing these kinds of opinions. Here's Chris Minns.
If we need to change laws in the state when it comes to hate speech, that's what we will do. And I don't do that lightly. It is impinging on people's rights.
Is he right? Is that an appropriate way to go, Evelyn?
One of the worst things that Australians do is in every single time something bad happens, they look to daddy government to make them feel safe again. And unfortunately, with that, it's such a double-edged sword because we are constantly looking for these short-term comforts and short-term securities.
So you're saying
we're missing out on these long-term freedoms which are going to keep us safe.
But are you saying with anti-Semitism, government should do nothing?
There's already laws in place, Kel. This is the thing. I'm happy to read you the laws that we have on incitement. There are countless laws that we have in the Crimes Act, that we have under all different acts of terrorism and everything you can imagine. We have so many arbitrary, useless laws at our fingertips. We do not need any more. We have laws for incitement. We have laws for harassment. We have laws for threatening violence. We have laws for arson. We have laws for graffiti. We do not need to add any. The only time you should ever add laws to or enact laws into your nation is if something is lacking, if there is a hole that needs to be plugged. It doesn't. We have laws for actual crimes. What we're doing here is we're trying to police speech, and we're trying to that whole leftist way of saying words equal harm, and that's a very, very dangerous slippery slope, and we don't need to go. But
in the case of anti-Semitism, it's a little bit more than being rude or taking offence, because centuries of anti-Semitism led to the murder of 6 million Jews. So there is something more behind anti-Semitism.
Communism has also led to millions of people being
that doesn't really tell us anything about the Holocaust. The Holocaust happened. We have to be aware that that's the kind of place
there are already laws here
up.
to deal with crimes, actual crimes.
So are you saying that what's happening is the government is simply not acting on the laws it's got?
No, I'm not a police officer investigating it, but I guarantee you if they found the person who put the graffiti on the cars or the glass, 100% they'd be taken to court and tried.
This is very simple, and this is something which the right has forgotten in this country, and that there is a difference between something being morally reprehensible and legally wrong. And for over 2,000 years now, Western civilization has come to a conclusion that it is better to have morally reprehensible views out in the public domain so you can discuss them, so you can debate them, as opposed to putting them into the shadows, because that's where you start to get this sort of toxic behaviour ferment in a way which eventually leads to Nazism. Above and beyond that, as you well know, we know it gets to a point where there is a subjective lens where people say that something is good and something is bad. We can't afford to have that. I hate it how Chris Minns just blanketly says, oh, well, we don't have American-style free speech in this country. Why not?
It's a threat as well, because what he was basically saying is, I know it impinges on your rights.
But we're not going to settle something as complex as that in 5 minutes. So you keep thinking about it, because there's more for us to discuss.